What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. We are out of town. We're on vacation for our anniversary in Paris, but we didn't want to leave you hanging, so we're still doing a Q&A, and our first question this week comes from Mark Zebro Jr., who says, in the new trailer when Luke is speaking about seeing Rey's raw strength once before, could he be referring to himself, implying he himself had something to do with the destruction of his Jedi Order and not Ben Solo? I have seen a couple people just speculating on who Luke is referring to when he says that. I've seen this strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then, it does now. I think that he is just talking about Ben and nobody else. I mean, that's what makes the most sense to me, especially when you take into account the story they're telling. I think The Last Jedi is going to be very much like a mirror of two heroes' journeys, but it's going to be like a hero journey and a villain journey, and we're going to see Rey and Kylo kind of doing some similar things, and I think they're going to be mirrors of each other. So I think that Luke is saying he saw this kind of strength once before in Ben Solo. He didn't respect it as much as he should have back then, and it obviously caused some problems. I don't think that Luke had anything to do with the destruction of his own Jedi Order. I think he is just referring to Ben. I've also seen people say that he could be referring to Palpatine or Darth Vader, especially because he said to Yoda, "I'm not afraid," and then Yoda said, "You will be," and I do think that that's a nice connection. But I think that in the context of The Last Jedi, it has to be Ben. Sticking with the Last Jedi trailer questions, Habia Mori says, you mentioned that you thought the conversation near fire between Rey and Kylo was massive misdirection. Given that Rogue One had entire scenes, most notably Jyn facing down a fighter on the antenna bridge, filmed specifically for the trailer that were never intended to be put in the film, do you think that there are any scenes in the Last Jedi trailer that are also fake? Not really, and I also don't quite buy into Gareth Edwards' explanation that the TIE fighter scene was only for marketing purposes. Rogue One went through so many reshoots that I think that's more where all those changes came from. Maybe it's true about the TIE fighter, but I don't know. I think it was just something that they changed and people got so upset about it that they were like, let's just say this. But I don't think we're going to see that with The Last Jedi because we haven't heard about any massive reshoots or changes to the script or anything like that. I think that for the most part what we saw in the trailer is all going to be in the film. There might be some alternate takes here and there, but I don't think there's going to be any major fake-outs like there were with Rogue One. Let's move on to some Star Wars Rebels questions, since the show comes back on Monday. Derek Spicer asks, do you think Thrawn survives Rebels' final season and becomes basically an anti-hero in his sequel book and in canon going forward? I do think now that we are getting confirmation of another book that he probably will survive Season 4. In Season 3, when he was announced, I was like, okay, he's going to be a one-off villain and he's going to die at the end of the season. I was glad that didn't happen, but I was like, okay, it's probably going to happen in Season 4, especially since they're introducing Rook. But now, since they're also talking about doing another book, I think it's less likely that he's going to die, especially since the first Thrawn book leads right into Rebel Season 3. So unless there is a significant gap in time between Rebel Season 3 and 4, I don't know when that book would take place. It's totally possible it could take place in that time period. But I just assume that there's not going to be enough time for any huge team-up between Vader and Thrawn to happen, so it's probably going to happen after Season 4. And Timothy Zahn, I got to talk to him at DragonCon, and he said at the time that he had ideas for 3 more Thrawn stories. Of course, he had already finished this Alliances book and was being very coy about that, but beyond this new book, he still has 2 more ideas. Whether or not Lucasfilm lets him run with those ideas is another story, but I wouldn't be surprised if Thrawn is a character that they keep around for a while, considering how popular he's been. Dason Flores has a related question. He says, we've talked about this a couple weeks ago, but now with the addition of a second Thrawn book, I think we need to seriously discuss the impact of putting Vader in everything. What can we do to stop this trend? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Vader, but I'd much rather have seen a cameo than a team-up of the two. I'm okay with the Vader-Thrawn team-up in this book, especially since they alluded to it in the first Thrawn book. We know that Thrawn had a history with Anakin Skywalker. Maybe he already knows that Anakin is Darth Vader. If he doesn't, I think we're going to see him find out and figure that out for himself over the course of this book. What I'm kind of expecting is that we're going to get not just the Thrawn-Vader team-up story, but also the Thrawn-Anakin team-up. I wouldn't be surprised if it had like a flashback, present-day dual timeline going on in that story. But yeah, like, I see what you're saying, but I don't have a problem with this Vader story. If he's in the Han Solo movie, I think that's probably pushing it a little much. Like, yeah, they don't need to shove Vader into everything. I don't want them to rely on him as a crutch, especially in the standalone movies, because then things just get limiting. But as to what we can do to stop this trend is, I mean, probably nothing. It's like, I'm gonna read the Thrawn book. I'm excited to read it, but if he's in the Han Solo movie and it doesn't work out, I mean, he could be in the Han Solo movie and it could be great, but if he's in there and it seems forced and it just doesn't fit, then, I mean, there's not much more we can do than be vocal about that. And finally, for patron questions, let's talk about Battlefront 2, since the beta just ended. Jared Hand says, in the Battlefront 2 trailer, you can see Princess Leia wearing her outfit from the Princess Leia comic. What other costumes of heroes from the canon would you like to see? I would like to see Luke in his yellow flight jacket. That seems to be their kind of go-to costume in the comics, and I like that for him. So I'd like to see him running around in that, especially if it's like before Return of the Jedi era stuff. He can have his blue lightsaber and the brown pants, the black shirt, and the yellow jacket. I think that would be incredibly cool to see. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon where I left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you access to extra Star Wars Explained goodies like monthly giveaways and audio commentaries for the films, and the combined donations really go a long way in supporting the channel. On to YouTube questions. Superstorm Owen asks, what happened to Darth Vader's Star Destroyer, the Devastator, when he got his Super Star Destroyer, the Executor? So after A New Hope, we don't actually see the Devastator anymore in the films, but it is confirmed to have remained in Imperial service. It actually went on to the Battle of Endor, and it was destroyed there by Blade Squadron, which was a squadron of B-Wings. Liam O wants to know, what is my favorite Imperial Starfighter / Star Destroyer / Dreadnought in all of Star Wars, including Legends? My favorite Starfighter is probably the TIE Phantom. I've got a soft spot in my heart for that. It was first introduced in the old video game Rebel Assault 2, and that was one of the first games I ever saved up my money for and bought on CD-ROM, and it's such a cheesy game, but it's a TIE fighter that has a cloaking device, and I always just kind of loved it. As for Dreadnought, I probably just have to go with the Eclipse, and I'm still very excited that they're teasing that it still exists in canon. Maybe not in the exact same iteration, like big and black with a super laser on the front. It might just be a regular Super Star Destroyer, but just the fact that there is a Super Star Destroyer and it was Palpatine's flagship and it was called the Eclipse, I'm excited to have that back. Nico asks, do you think that OP force powers like Force Storm, Force Drain, Thought Bomb, and Force Supernova should return to canon? Not really. I wouldn't mind some of them. Like a Force Storm could be cool in a film or something. It just has to work. I don't know if that makes sense, but as long as they do it in a very interesting and they convey that, like, oh, this is a huge deal, it's terrifying, everyone run for your lives, like, as long as it's conveyed in a terrifying way, I'd be okay with something like Force Storm coming back. Thought Bomb, I mean, I love the Darth Bane books, but I always thought that the Thought Bomb was a little bit out there and just kind of goofy, especially in name. But that's not really Drew Karpyshyn's fault. That was something that was created well before in a comic series, I believe, that was already about Darth Bane, and then he just kind of had to take that and adapt it. I like to think that he would have named it something else. But yeah, for the most part, like these really, really OP force powers, I always just kind of thought it was weird to have names for them. Like, these are specific techniques that someone has thought up and mastered. Like, I like the idea that a Force Storm is more almost something that happened by accident. Like, what if Rey or Kylo in Episode 9, what if they accidentally just make a storm in the Force, and like this is something that no one's ever seen or heard of before? I think that's more interesting than the clone of Palpatine, like going, I'm going to create a Force Storm, which is something that I know how to do. Like, I don't know. That's, to me, it doesn't feel like that's how the Force works. Killian Browder wants to know what happened to Wolf and Gregor after Rex joined the Ghost Crew. The simple answer is, we don't know. But Dave Filoni at Star Wars Celebration very strongly hinted that we're going to find out in Season 4. I think that Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels is going to take the opportunity to wrap up all of those loose ends. He straight up said that he didn't get to finish the Clone Wars the way he wanted, and he wants to do that with Star Wars Rebels. So I think that any of those major questions that we have, I think he's going to do his best to answer them, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Wolf and Gregor pop up again. Spyros Kakanis asks, could the Empire have won the Galactic Civil War if they didn't spend their resources on superweapons? I don't think the Empire lost the Galactic Civil War because of resources. They pretty much always could have found more. I think that it was a question of overconfidence and, yeah, over-reliance in superweapons, but I think that even if they had said, you know, let's not build a second Death Star, let's just sink all of our money into Super Star Destroyers and Star Destroyers, I still think they might have lost. I think that the bigger problem that they had in the Battle of Endor especially was that they're going to set this trap and it's going to be like an all-or-nothing attack, basically. We're going to put the Emperor there. We're going to have the Death Star 2 there. We're going to have Darth Vader there. They put all of their eggs in that one basket. I think that it was just a question of extreme overconfidence, and even Luke says that your overconfidence is your weakness. I think they just really underestimated the rebellion, and even if they didn't have all two super weapons, I think they still would have underestimated the rebellion, and they would have made some fatal mistakes somewhere along the lines. That's all the time I have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below, or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.